My name is Eliana. I'm a showrunner out of LA. I work for LA TV Network. I'm also a host and I'm a filmmaker. So I work for Eliana. So welcome today. I'm very excited to celebrate these amazing filmmakers that won the Latino short film competition, which is an integral part of celebrating our community. So I'm gonna get started by calling each one of them by their name, the name of their film, and then we're gonna say just like a little short line about what this film is about, okay? So, first off, we got Rodrigo Oliva, and his film is Thank You, Have a Nice Day. So this film takes us on this kind of anxious ride of a New York delivery man and his challenges as he tries to provide for his family. I watched all of these films out. They are beautiful. They are an emotional roller coaster, and so give it up for Rodrigo. Congratulations. Okay, so let's call Mariana Serrano, and the producer Mark Polaski is also here. Their film is Un Pequeño Corte. Now this is a really cute film with a lot of hidden messages, but it's an innocent take on kind of a culturally imposed beauty standard. I'll just leave it. If you haven't seen it, go see it. Very creative take on that. So congratulations, thank you for being here as well. Next up, let's get Saida Pirani. Her film is Hecha Conmigo, which centers around a young street vendor forced to take a leap of faith while also trying to provide for herself and her elderly father. Did you see that? Eh? Thank you for being here. And then last but not least, we have Olivia de Camps, with her film is Chico Virtual, which is a really unique and creative depiction of youth, social media, and immigration status. So give it up for these amazing filmmakers.
Yeah, definitely so much gratitude from really from every process, from start to finish. You know, this was an ambitious project for a small grant, and being able to bring it to life already, just like, you know, there's a lot of pride in obviously the work that was done, and it feels incredible. And obviously there's validation there because, you know, of all the work that everyone put into this, a cast, a crew, it was a lot. So it's also a little bit of a vulnerable moment because the story is super personal. It's something that comes from my life experience, and, you know, knowing that so many people will be able to watch it on such an incredible platform that everyone knows about, it's an amazing opportunity. We're just so grateful.
So from my side, I guess, like, as her producer, I've had a couple of features that I've been a producer on that went to HBO. But like for this film, like, I don't know.
And all that I was supposed to shoot right before COVID started, and then it kind of like, the production just sort of paused because of it. So a year later, I looked back, I was like, I'm just gonna shoot this. Like, I'm just gonna shoot the short. And I ended up working with my favorita, who's an amazing actress, and Pide Vicioso, and I still couldn't find like the main actor, who was a young boy, and I was looking for a Dominican American boy who could mostly speak English, and his Spanish not that like fluent. And I spoke to that lady scene in the Dominican Republic, and they put me in contact with Jaden Michael. And at the time he was calling Kaepernick and calling White in Black and White for Ava DuVernay's TV show on Netflix, and he was in LA. And I spoke to his mom. At the time he was a minor, and yeah, and I kind of like, we met up. He was in New York for a weekend, and we met up. We spoke about the script. He was totally down to do it. We worked on it so much. We became really close friends, and yeah, working with him was amazing. He's so smart and just such an amazing actor. And yeah, like I had a tiny skeleton crew, and we ended up making the movie with like my closest friends, and it somehow happened. And yeah, it was during COVID, so it was really hard, but we obviously went through all the COVID protocols. But yeah, and so the post-production process was really slow, and because the budget was so small, like I had like really great people work on it, but obviously like they were working on their other full-time jobs, so it was pretty slow. So I never really did a full-on festival run. But yeah, that.
You don't have to go in order of that. How fun, Robert? I mean, I can go. It's fine. But next time we can change it up. So for me, this film, it came out of my past experiences as a community organizer. So I've been the neighborhoods where we shot in Carrito are the neighborhoods where I've lived and worked for about 20 years. And as a community organizer, and I've worked mostly with working class immigrant communities, and I had also started doing documentary before I did narrative film. And for me, I had done this short documentary called Judith, Portrait of a Street Vendor. And that film, it did well. And then I always thought, like, she would always, Hudit is her name, and she lives in the Bronx, and she would always talk about, like, when I was following her, they use these shopping carts. They're not even big with those big carts, and they just use shopping carts, but she would be freaking out every day. Is it still there? Is it still outside? You know, because it would always get stolen. They have to walk them up. And they get them all decked out on like big wheels. They have like this guy who's basically a really genius engineer who works in like some basement somewhere in Bronx.
I was very impressed when I saw the
Yeah.
car. I was like, ooh, I was like,
Yeah, no, this is all real. A real guy made that cart for us. It does it for the vendors. Yeah, and so for me, I was like, what if I wrote a story where the cart actually gets stolen? And what would happen? And it's a shopping cart that's all decked out, but it's so important to this person, you know? And especially if it's a person who is so kind of has embraced this idea of like, God, it's a dog eat dog world, and I can't trust anybody, and so everybody get out of my way, and I'm gonna do what I need to do. And what happens to her if that gets stolen? And so that was the story I wanted to tell. And obviously, like, the inspiration was not only Hudit, but it was also like my Opal, you know, as a part of me in her. And I think just a lot of like going that I grew up with, who I wanted to also put a character on the screen who doesn't have to be nice. She can be pissed about her situation, and she could be a woman, and she could be a woman of color, and she could be working class. It doesn't matter because she can be a true human being. And so for me, that was really important too, because it's like the women I used to work with this community organizers, they did everything. They were the caretakers, they were the primary breadwinners, they were the activists and the organizers in the community. And so, yeah, I get this too if I was on like 3 hours of sleep every day, you know? So that's for that.
Thank you. It's a beautiful, beautiful.
So for Un Pequeño Corte, I really always knew I wanted it to be very grounded in my roots in Miami, and also the reality of what it feels like to grow up as a child of immigrants. You know, I feel like there's a lot of culture that comes into that like sometimes like gets overlooked in films, and I wanted to center it around the POV of a child, because I think that that's a huge thing. You know, sometimes like adults get so wrapped up in their own world that you don't realize that you're forming a child's thoughts and what they're gonna expect out of the world and these ideas. So I knew that I wanted it to be very much in her POV and just kind of like how she's navigating the situation. And obviously the event, like I mentioned, is based on something that happened in my life, but it's also like her characters on so many like young women that I know and women in general that like have gone through. There's a lot of beauty standards in all of our culture, in toda la cultura, but definitely growing up in Miami, you feel it. So it's like such a pertinent thing that happens. Like you feel that, and from an early age. And obviously the tone of this film is very lighthearted and it's very cute. People always tell me like it's so cute and her performance and all these things. But for me, it was really about like, what is she going through? You know, like we sometimes like, something that could be as silly as cutting your hair as a kid can actually like, you know, kind of infiltrate your life for the rest of it. Like I haven't had a haircut in forever because I have, you know, these ideas of like what it, you know, ideas that were imposed that I didn't form them myself. You know, they were kind of like put on me, and we do that a lot. I feel to kids, and I wanted it to just be like in the moment and kind of like what we're feeling is really what she's going through at the moment. So that's why I wanted to tell that story. And then, yeah, I was super involved with every aspect of it because obviously when you're doing something low budget, you have to be. And I actually enjoyed it so much because I got to pick every single piece of wardrobe and like I made the makeup looks and went over it with my makeup artist and like it all means a lot. And when you talk about like Easter eggs and like small details, for me, the reason why we're in this like retro-esque salon is because in Cuban culture, like they love the 50s vibe and like the Marilyn Monroe y todo, Mariling, and the hair, the blonde, and like you have to spend so much money to have highlights and all this stuff. And it's an expectation that it's just an interesting perspective to really dive into. So I had a lot of fun creating it.
Yeah, that's what I love about these films too, is that, they might depict a certain thing, like for example, a cutting of a hair, but you can relate to it on so many other different levels. Like for me, I automatically went back to like when I used to go to DR for the summers and they would straighten my hair. And I didn't know why. And then I thought it was just a blow dry and I'd go back to Puerto Rico. My mom would be like, that was un alisado. Like they actually permed my hair straight. And I'm like, I don't know. I just go to the salon. So there's so many things. And even with like the anxiety of like, is my cart going to be there? Like you can translate that to, I think a lot of just families from underserved communities, there's this thing that we depend on to be able to provide, or that our parents depended on to be able to provide, be it a car, be it a job, be it the one person that shows up every week to buy the tamales, like, and that anxiety like really came through, those feelings came through. And I think they touched on so many different topics and like the social media part and just the anxiety of like wanting to not have to deal with like an immigration status in your film was really touching and a really kind of new take on that. And so let's talk about yours, Sylvie. Abundance.
So my story evolved like a lot, like from the very beginning. It started with I read like this book called Enrique's Journey. I don't know if you heard about it, but it's like it's Argentinian journalists that follow this Guatemalan kid going through the border, going through like stuff, right? And half of the book is like the journey. The other half of the book is like him living here, trying to adapt, stuff like that. And one of those chapters, she talks about how immigrant workers get robbed all the time, and there's no media that's covering that at all, right? And it's not only New York City; it's all around the U.S., right? It's like it's not. It's different now, but like back then it was like that jornalera that they call it, right? So workers would go, they get paid like weekly, they would carry cash, and all these gangs all around would know they carry cash, right? So it's like they would wait for them, at the corner of their house and stuff like that. And so I read that and it like really struck me because like you don't read about it at all, right? I emailed her and she was like, yeah, like no one's talking about this, right? So it was like, yeah, you should, good luck in your research, but so it started from there. That was kind of the seed that started everything, and then I was like, okay, I want to do something about it, right? It's like I'm in New York now. I want to adapt it to New York, right? It's like immigrant workers. I've been living here for many years, so it's like I have a lot of contact with Hispanic, Mexican workers and stuff like that, right? It's like, and the leader workers are like a big backbone of New York, right? It's like they're everywhere and stuff like that. And during the pandemic, they got like they started like getting robbed all the time, and like again, authorities wouldn't do anything. Right? So it's like, okay, I'm gonna do a story about a delivery worker gets robbed, and doing research, it's like I found out that like 80% of them are indigenous. So a lot of them are indigenous, so the alienation it's way harder, right? And it's like some of them even come here and learn Spanish, right? And they'll speak English and stuff like that. So it's like, so from there, from many other stories, talking with immigrant workers, I kind of wrote that story. And then, then it started, it was during the pandemic, so it's like, started doing the production and stuff like that. I knew that I wanted like an indigenous person, and
the dude or someone that could ride a bike like freely through New York City. So it was very hard to cast someone actually. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do non-actors now to be more, you know, and cute to the story, right? So it like, and that was a very long process. That took me like 6 months of, you know, ordinary going in the street, stopping them, and it's like, of course, it's like, you know,
So you were ordering deliveries, trying to
order
find
delivery,
your
and then like,
delivery
hey,
person.
what's your name? What do you do? Are you interested in make, you know, because you can't tell me right no, like you're like, oh,
Yeah.
let's make a video, whatever, let's go eat or something, or you know. So it was a very long process, and one of the producers, she actually found this guy that they, you know, like this other guy, and you know, after many castings, it's like our main character, it was like, you know, he just sends us like a selfie video, and it's like, that's the guy. He's not afraid of the camera. She's like very natural because half of the short is like improvised. So we're like, I would just give him cues, and like this guy would kind of improvise, and then I started like kind of co-writing the story and to, you know, make it, you know, more again. So that was
So you let the story kind of tell you.
yeah, because he actually had like a very similar experience. He had like a daughter back in Mexico, was indigenous. He had like he got mobbed like at least 3 times. So it like he even told me, yeah, this is what you do. This is what happens. This is what, you know. So it's like, yeah, that's how it evolved.
Well, and what dialect exactly was he speaking in the film? Was it?
It's close to Flamenco, and it's a dying language in the Sierra of Mexico.
That was really interesting to take for me too. I was like, oh, this is even, you know, because just already the complexity of like immigration, right? Coming from another country, trying to provide, and then you add the indigenous part to it, and then you add like, so there's like 3 layers of intersectionality there. So that was a really interesting take on that too. I'm curious for you all, you know, when we talk about short films and stories and crafting stories, what are some things that you can look back now and say, like, what are some do's and some don'ts when we talk about like making a short film? Because I feel like, you know, when we talk about a story, there's always a story within a story of a story. How do you narrow it down to the point where you're like, this is the part of the story that I want to tell. This is my short film. And then what are some do's and some don'ts? Excited to talk with everybody.
No. She was just passing it to me to encourage me, so I'll go ahead and go. I think the biggest thing I'm learning and I've learned is to keep it simple as possible, because the layers and the complexity will come out with specifics. And so for me, because I like to cover a lot, and I think sometimes it's too much and it doesn't serve the story. So I think the other thing I'm trying to learn is it doesn't need to be perfect at the script stage, and that what's amazing about our art form as filmmakers is that we have multiple opportunities to write. And like, that's not just the script, it's also on set. And then it's also to see what the actors are giving you. It's like, you know, I'm working with non-actor children right now, and they're from the neighborhood, and they've played a part where I'm shooting their whole lives. And so they can tell me, you know, how to add to the story, and so the actors bring that. And then I think the edit is such an amazing opportunity we have to shape our story. So I think like with this new film that I'm about to shoot, I'm like, you know what? Because I had to rewrite the script, I decided to cast a girl instead of a boy, how I had originally written it. And what I decided to do is like, you know what? I'm gonna rewrite the script for her, and now I'm good. Like, I don't need to keep rewriting until it's perfect, because I'm gonna have many opportunities, and at some point I need to relax and just let the story come to me in the different phases of the filmmaking process. So that's kind of what I'm doing now, and I just find like the more I can take off the extra stuff, the sharper the story can be. That makes sense.
Yeah, so the simpler, better, the more movement has to breathe, it seems like. You go into production, the story will tell you how it wants to be told. And even in editing, if you're editing it, it'll be like, actually, I want to happen here.
Yeah, yeah, the story can change, you know, in the edit, it might change, and there were times where I did, like, for this film, I didn't know exactly what my story was until I was in the edit. Because when I wrote it, I had a couple things on it that it was thinking ahead, that I was like, this is actually the story, and I got to shape it again.
Very cool. Who else wants to share do's and don'ts of shorts and how you
Mark, the producer of mine, would definitely agree with you on that simplicity note, because he always tells me it's like, wow, how are we gonna make that happen with this budget? So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Like being able to know the core, I think that's. I mean, I also think that going with your gut is important though, because sometimes like it really does inform you, like as an artist, like what we want to develop. So yeah, like I think that if the core is powerful of the story, then like you don't want a short film that's gonna be Spanish too far, that's not gonna hold audience attention because, you know, it's a short film. But at the same time, like you want to, it's a sweet spot, and that's kind of hard to time, and that's what also you fight instinct and like following your gut. You have to just kind of, you have to just feel it. And the same thing with like casting. So the protagonist, her name is Lucia Malero, and she had been in a couple commercials, she had done a couple little photo shoots, she had never been on a real set before, like, you know, for
So how did you get her to cry the way that she did?
we'll talk about
Okay, because I was like, this girl is
instance.
crying. Like, what did they do to her?
And Mark was like, you know, like we were nervous, right? Like that's something that like it's like, okay, is that gonna happen on set? Like this child has never done this. And also I wanted to this was her first time on a set like this, and it was long days and like there was a lot going on, and I wanted to make sure she was having a good experience too. But for casting in specific, like I was like, she's the one. Like I saw she was very extroverted and a little self-tamed, but then when I met her like on Zoom at first, she was super shy, and we were like, wow, like she was really really nervous. Like I guess like when she had memorized a couple little lines here and there, she was okay. But then I was like, oh, this is the kid. Like I can tell you by la mirada. Like I was like, this is her. This is who it's got to be. And I think that you have to know when to like push for the right thing. As a director, you're leading the ship kind of, and even though it might not seem like the perfect decision, like sometimes it really is. And then yeah, like back to the simplicity thing, just trying to make sure that you're not overwhelming the narrative and also what's gonna have to happen in production. We just did another short film together called Arondeche Powerball, and it was a big movie for a tiny budget. There was like rain towers and stuff like that, and just like, puts a lot of stress. So that's kind of like, even though I've done it, don't do it. You know, like it can be bad. But in terms of the crying and stuff, again, like we decided we wanted to schedule it for the last thing for her to do, because it's stressful on the actor, especially as a child who isn't used to this kind of work. And, you know, I had talked to the TP, Juan Maria, and I was like, let's put some, you know, like, let's block her off from everyone. It will just be me and you and, like, the sound guy. Like, you know, it'll just be us, like, tiny flags everywhere so that she feels, like, boxed in, confused, scared. Her mom was gone. Her cousin, who's an extra, was gone. So she was, like, annoyed. You know, she wanted to go play. We kind of wore her out for a while. And then she was giving great emotional faces, lots of pouting, but not that tear, not the moco, not, you know, like what we're hoping for. And you know what, like I spoke to her mom and her aunt came. Her aunt is an actress, she's in it, she plays Jenny, the hairstylist. And she was like, dile que se le murió el perro. And I was like, I'm not gonna scar a kid right now, oh my God, I'm not gonna do this. So I spoke to her mom and I was like, look, this is crucial. And I was honest. I think honesty is really important too when you're, you know, leading. Like I said, like you want to make sure that everyone knows what's going on. You don't want to be like trying to do something that no one is clear on. And I told them like, this is super important. Like how you're her mom. You know her better than anyone. I know my mom knows me better than anyone. So I was like, how can we achieve this today? So it's okay to ask for help. That's another thing. Like you don't have to always be like, oh, I'm the powerful one, you know what I mean? Like, it's okay to be like, I don't know how to do this in this situation, let's make it happen. And her mom was like, she went and whispered in her ear. She had never been left alone. She had not, because it was COVID, she had never gone to kindergarten, preschool, or anything. Very close to her parents. And her mom told her that she was leaving. I'm leaving. And she thought that she was leaving her. Y ya estaba, she was exhausted, all right, la pobre. It was day 2 after a crazy first day, and she broke down. She broke down, but she was incredible because she was able to follow direction, because I walked her through it the whole time as she was having basically a meltdown, probably I don't know if it was like her first ever meltdown, definitely her first on camera.
This child.
No! I hugged her, and her mom came back and hugged her, and we told her, like, we told her it was really important. We were honest with her. We're like, we really need to do this. This is, and she really did, she was very smart, let me tell you. This little girl, she's 6 years old, she was so smart. Had the best conversations with this kid, and she got it, and the next day she showed up like a little professional at work, and yeah, it was a great experience with her.
Well, I'll add a secondary crazy story, which is we lost the footage of her crying. I've never been on a shoot ever where we've lost footage since I was in film school. We both worked in the industry like professionals, like commercials, and and I've never been on a set that lost footage. And we went, and the DIT was like looking like really like sad, and the EP's over, and I'm looking mad, and like, what's going on? And meanwhile, I'm trying to like leave her in a directing space. And, no, don't worry about it. I'll figure, nothing. And we go and the DIT was like, yeah, I think we lost footage. And if you lose anything on a tiny little movie like this, it's gonna kill you. But like, I was like, what did you lose? And they're like, the crying. And like, we could never. I don't care if you were like Spielberg and you had $1 billion budget, you can't make her cry again because she wasn't. The acting she was doing was staying and doing the stuff she had to do. She was crying for real. You can never make her cry for real again because it's not going to work the next day. Like, the mom can't go and leaving again. Like, come on, you were leaving yesterday. Like, you didn't leave. So we lost it, and they shot over the card, which if you shoot over, like if you delete, you can bring it back. But if you shoot over it, you supposedly can't bring it back. But we brought it back. So shout out to an app called Red Undead. Which even the people who like made the app said like once you shoot on it, it's like dead, and it came back. So I don't know. I don't believe in a lot of things, but if there is like miracles or something, like we lost.
That's like the biggest nightmare is like to lose the footage.
I had no idea what would be fun for me. Estaba verde, pálido. I was like, oh my god! Like I remember like very clearly how emotional we were. Like when he didn't tell me until it was recovered, and we were like at the like last quarter of the day. Still shooting. It was okay, but
You're already. Yeah, we're there on set. Like I'm going back and forth, and I'm telling you, I felt this like dread that I've never felt like in my life. Because I'm like, how can I tell her that like the moment in the movie is gone? Like I legit like broke down, and when we like recovered it, I like told her outside, and like I cried. So like it was like crazy. Because I mean, what would you do like? Without that, like, what's she gonna do? Just like pout the next day? Like it's not gonna just hit home.
Yeah.
And that was like a magical moment that we can never get ever again. So I'll just say, for the advice portion, make sure you never lose any.
and we had experience.
Oh yeah, like super experienced people that just.
He was like, what happened? What happened?
Yeah.
Things happen, yeah.
Right. Well, the whole thing. Just real quick, was just we were shooting in a school and it was we had a really big setup. We were using a golf cart to get back and forth, and one of the ACs like put the card in a like bag or something. She's like, "Oh, I'll give it to him at the end of the day because it's like a 5-minute like journey to get back to where the DIT is based." So like that's somehow how it happened. It's still unexcusable, but it's a miracle.
But I mean, it goes to show, right? When you're working with limited budgets, right? You're working with limited time, and there's stress, and then you're rushing, and then you're working with children. There's a lot going on, and so some things sometimes fall through the cracks. And it's about like, do you have the resources, the training, the people, the network to be able to help you like get over that hump? And I think like you guys figure it out. So How about you?
Do's and don'ts. So yeah, for me, it's like a big learning was that it's like you're constantly writing. It's like you don't have to have like the final script, writing at it like on paper, and it's like it's constantly evolving. Although I think like in short film, there's like some people even say that short films are like harder than features because you don't have enough time like to develop characters and stuff like that. And it's more like a magic trick, right? Like tension, then something reveals or whatever, right? So I guess like my big learning is like, knowing where you want to end, right? Because like at the end of the day, like in short film, that's what you get at the end, right? So it's like that's what the audience keeps, right? So it's like I would use it like as a guiding, right? Okay, this is my guard, and then you know where you're landing. The rest is like easier. Like I'll introduce my character, what's gonna happen to them, and stuff like that. Okay? Sometimes we get lost in I have this really cool story, but like then where's it leading us, right? So it stays there.
Oh, that's a really good point. If you understand where you're at, then it's easier to kind of work your way backwards toward that as opposed to I have everything figured out. It's like, just know what is the message you're trying to say, where you're trying to land, and then let it get you there.
Yeah, I agree with what all of you said, and I feel like it's a lot about knowing what kind of story you want to tell, what's the meat of the story, what's like sort of like building it up to what it's going to get to. I think one big thing for me that I'm still sort of dealing with is how to take notes, and in the pre-production and in post-production, and who to sort of listen to, and I think that being careful who you listen to, and just trusting yourself more than anyone else. And I think that's something that I've been sort of dealing with too, which is like I just shot a film in the Dominican Republic as well, and when you're improvising also, it's kind of hard because you just have so much, and you don't know how to cut it into a short that sort of works, and it ends up being too much sometimes, and you just don't have the luxury of time. And like in the short that I just did in the DR, it was all non-actors, so we shot in that, and there's so many people and all talking over each other, and I feel like sometimes you think you're losing the story, but having those really authentic human moments sometimes are really worth it. And it's sort of about, I think like balancing what you're getting and knowing that you have the story, and then, okay, where can I play? Like now, like it's sort of like playtime on set. And I feel like playtime is also important because you do need those human moments, obviously depending on the story you're doing. But I think the notes thing is a big thing. I think it's about, especially when you're in film school, everyone's giving you feedback. I feel like it's really important to just go back to your gut and your original story and what you always wanted to do, and sort of the why. Like, why am I making this? And I think that's super important. That's something that I always go back to. Why am I making this? And yeah.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing. How are we doing on time? Good. Okay. Do you have a question?
Yeah.
Yes. Go ahead.
Do you guys think about length? Because that seems to be like the issue of late. It's sometimes shorts, not short enough. Sometimes they're a half hour. Sometimes they're hard to sell nowadays because people like it really short and sweet. That 15, 20-minute sweet spot. Is that something that you guys thought about, like, or even go into production? Like, what are the your points that you think about? And something that you brought up, like thinking about thinking about the end result. Did you think in advance, like, I think I would do 10 minutes, and there's it, do you think about that as far as sales and like where the short can go afterwards? Because sometimes, at least for festival programmers, a lot of half hours, take big chunks of time, right? We don't even accept films that are like 45 minutes. Trust me, you die those, and they go back and retake. But you think about that.
I mean, for me, it's always about the story. It's like whatever the story needs, that's the length. But of course, you need to play the festival game, right? So it's like you need to find that, that sweet spot that it's better for the festival, route and stuff like that. But I would say it's like even, if you got a good story that flows and it's, that it's flowing, it's like I think festivals will accept it as it is, right? But it's like, yes, because sometimes we sacrifice story for, marketing. I mean, that happens a lot, like with advertising and stuff like that. It's like you're always going for, with some specific timing, and it's like sometimes you can't even tell the story right or whatever. So it's like, for me, it's always, story is gonna tell you, you know, what the plot.
So yeah, I mean, I think that it has to be the right story. Like as a writer director, you know, you kind of know yourself in terms of pacing as well. Like you can have, you know, something that really happens 5 minutes in real time, but if the tone of the film is, you know, very spaced out and like you feel like, you know, you want like these more immersive takes and longer takes, then you know that going into it. For me, especially with Un Pequeño Porte, like it's not a crazy amount of things that happen. We're not cramming in a bunch of stuff. Like the story it's from, you know, A to B to C, and you know where you're going in terms of story structure. But I knew I was gonna have these like longer moments and want to focus more on that dreamlike feel of being a child and stuff like that. So it is something that you consider. I consider it definitely. And I feel like as an audience member, I know when I feel like a sweet spot when I'm watching something. I know when I feel like satisfied with something, and I try to emulate that within the storytelling. It's a conscious thing for me. And I wouldn't, you know, like right now I was submitting for a couple different grants for a project that I have in specific, and it wouldn't really work as a feature in my opinion because the story is just a moment. It feels more like a moment to me. So I wouldn't want to drag that out and vice versa. Like if you have something that's expansive, you don't want to cram it and not, you know, fully develop your characters and stuff like that. So I think, yeah, for sure, something to consider.
Yeah, I agree. It's like, I think of it as, okay, this story was given to me and now my job is to serve the story, number one. Like always, always. So, for me, the best advice I got when I was in the edit on this film was, don't think about the length, just make the best film that you know how to, that is there. And then I'm really, really hoping it's like 15 to 20 minutes, you know, because I know that that's what festival programmers want. But if I think about that while I'm making choices, it fogs my ability to make the best choices for the film. So I just have to kind of forget about all that, like all of it. You know, and I think it's hard because after the success of this film, I will be very honest with this film I'm about to shoot. This is in the back of my mind, like, oh, okay, so now I'm expecting and other people are expecting this. But I think as a filmmaker, I am learning how I have to tune everything out. Because I'm first and foremost an artist. And if I don't stay true to that, I'm going to burn out, I think. And I need to keep what made me originally want to do this alive in me so that I can be the best storyteller possible for whatever story is in front of me. So I think for me, yes, believe me, I am thinking of those things, but I have to like, it's so hard, but I have to be like, nope, none of that can be in my mind right now. But then when I'm done, then I say, okay, what's our strategy? Then I get into business mode. And you know, I think that's what's amazing about filmmakers. Like I have mad respect for my colleagues as well, because we have to do, it's an art form that is also bridges into entertainment. And I think there's so many levels of the skill set. We have to be so good at so many things. And so yeah, I just think I look at my other filmmaker colleagues and friends and I'm like, I think you're amazing, you know, because this is what we're doing and we have to then go into the business mode and, you know, so yeah.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I started with editing, so for a long time I was editing, I still do. So for me, pacing is super important, and I feel like whenever I think about pacing, and I usually know how long the movie's gonna be. And even like in my last short when we were shooting, I remember the DP and the producers were just like, this is too much, like you don't need so much, this is not covered. Just like I was just shooting so much other stuff that was happening. And they're like, it's gonna be such a long movie, it's gonna be such a long movie. But I always knew it was gonna be 15, 16 minutes max. And in the edit process, it ended up being 15 and 16 minutes max. Because I do have an editing brain, I think. So I also, like how you guys were saying, I also think about sort of entertainment in a way. Like I do, and who your audience is. Like if you have really slow, long takes, like, and the movie's incredibly slow, you know who your audience is gonna be, and you sort of have to sort of cater the film to your audience. And I think that comes with who your audience is at the end of the day. And I feel like the dream is having a sort of like that balance of doing an artful film and still an incredibly impactful and moving and entertaining film, I guess. But yeah.
I think I did see that in the credits. You did edit your.
I edited it with usually like my editors and we did it
Yeah,
together.
I was like, ooh, okay, director, editor, writer, I get it, okay. So that actually covered a lot of what I was gonna ask in the next question. So let's talk about the business side of it, right? Because like you said, like we are artists, you want to keep the essence of what made you a filmmaker, but now we're talking about streaming companies, networks interested in your film. There's an acquisition at the table. What are some takeaways that you all have from the process of marketing your film, of meeting, you know, with everyone that you had to meet with to be able to make this happen? And like, what's one of the main takeaways you have from the whole process of like getting your film acquired onto the streaming network?
Well, for me, it was like the big learning was like make sure you have all the copyright stuff in there. You know, when we shot it, like there was like a lot of improvisation and stuff. So it's like there's many logos there. There's like, you know, like stuff like that. That is like music here and there in the back. And I was like, oh, you know, the festivals, it's fine. You know, it's like no one's gonna, you know, tell me anything about it. Actually, when HBO reached out, I was like, oh man, because they were like, we want to talk to you about, you know, some copyright stuff. It's like, oh, I'm gonna get sued because I had this song that I was using that is like I was reaching out like to the label and they were like back and forth but nothing. You know, they weren't replying and stuff, so it's like, oh, I'm getting sued and stuff. At the end of the day, it's no, we're interested in, you know, in having your film or whatever. So it's like that was like the biggest learning for me.
Oh, you want the film bad, you gotta.
Exactly. Yeah. Actually, that's what happened.
Yeah.
Like change some songs here and there, blur some logos or whatever, some posts and stuff.
Well, yes, I mean, as you know, as her producer and like, you know, thinking of a lot of this like for her, because
To have been accepted and invited to the festivals, because it really does give you an opportunity to meet other people that are going through similar things, that maybe know more about, like you said, like this clinic, right? A legal clinic. Like being able to hear that firsthand is so important, and it's a huge part of why we submit to festivals, so that we can kind of gain that community in the industry too.
Well, for me, I love music, and I think it's such a big part of Latin culture. And I put a lot of music into my films, like diegetic music and non-diegetic. And I've actually had so many issues because of it. I did another short that Shorts TV was trying to acquire it, and I never thought that anyone would want to acquire it. So of course, I put all the music I wanted. My hard drive got lost, and then I couldn't change it, and then I was trying to contact Hector's father, who's a reggaetonero, and who's now a priest. And he's left his life, his reggaeton life, he's left his life.
I'm not gonna give you permission.
Oh, no, no.
That's not who I am anymore.
I tried to find his wife, I tried to find his kids, I messaged all of them on Facebook, none of them reply. I find the church where he works at, I called the church, and he's like, no, I'm sorry, like he doesn't want to talk about his past, he's a priest now. Like, I'm like, oh my god. So anyways, I couldn't tell the short basically. So for this other short, for Chico, I really had music in mind. But for the festival run, I was like, okay, let me just put my dream music and it'll be fine. And then HBO contacted me and they said the exact same thing about copyright, and I'm like, oh no, like I'm gonna get sued, the same thing. And then I called, I'm on the phone with them, and they're like, do you have the rights to the songs? And I'm like, I can get them, but the last one I used una canción de palo. That's a very it's like an iconic original like Dominican song from like this palo band that lives like in the mountains of the Dominican Republic, where there's no Wi-Fi, like they don't have phone, like they literally just don't use phones. And I told Michael, from HBO, I was like, the last song I definitely can't get. And he said, well, can you please try to get it? Like, we really love it. Can you try to get it? And I was like, okay. So I go to the DR, I contact everyone I know that I think knows them. And somehow I ended up
understand that, you know, you can be like, oh, this is my story, this is what it is, but you know, you need to make sure a broader audience is getting it. And I think once we got that right, it was like doors open big time.
It's so interesting because when I read the log line, I read it after I saw the film. And to me, I was like, oh, you know, this is a moment of like risk taking, of desperation, of like necessity, right? Of like, I'm gonna put everything I have just, but when I read the word, the leap of faith, I almost kind of like it calmed me down a little bit, you know? So that's interesting to think of like the language that you use to describe your project as well. That's a really good point. Before is there any other questions anyone else has?
I was gonna say one more thing on that note, just like as an advice thing, because like, you know, it comes like it's like second nature to me because I work on commercials and stuff, so of course I know I need releases and permissions and stuff like that, but just for you filmmakers out there, like, instead of just being like, hey, you're down to be in my film, like, are you down to be in my film? Cool, sign this, because you never know if it will get, you know, bigger. Like, we didn't think this one, you know, yeah, like, just cover it originally, because it's not hard if someone's already saying yes, just, okay, sign your name saying yes, so that later, you know, there's no like issues. So just, that's my piece of advice, is just cover all your bases in the beginning and you'll be good for if it happens.
So I think the common theme here is like create with the intention that this is going to be bigger than what, you know, like don't limit yourself in how you're putting the film together, but also from the legality standpoint and from the marketing standpoint as well. It seems like. Any other questions?
Actually, I have.
Just,
We have another question back there too.
oh, you did? Ask his question.
She like reluctantly looked at her hand, but yes, please. There we go.
Hello. Hi. On the production side, how was it? You guys got like brands, you guys with your actors, you guys ask for favors. Like, how was that money part? Yeah. Yeah. Go for it.
Yeah, so for Un Pequeño Corte, we were lucky enough to have a small grant, and we really, with the help of like Mark, I mean, like I wouldn't have been able to do it without, like, you know, you need an experienced producer, especially I feel like when you have so little money, but he helped me in every way possible to make this happen, and we did pay our actors. You know, at that point you have to obviously negotiate rates. I don't think we had anyone who was SAG. It was, yeah. No, we didn't have any SAG actors, so it's, you know, there's a little bit more wiggle room there when you're negotiating, obviously. And yeah, I mean, it's a lot of favors, a lot of people, if they believe in the story, usually you can have more help, and obviously it's a huge help. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tough to make things happen, even when you do have grants and things like this. You know, it's about being very scrappy sometimes, you know, and like making sure that you can make things work. I don't know if you want to speak a little to that.
Well, yeah, so we got a grant, but kind of whenever I work with Mariella, anything that we talk about, you know, we'll get a $10,000 grant, but she wrote a $70,000 short. So, you know, then we just have to, you know, like you said, like, you know, like call in favors and, you know, get people kind of like behind the project. But I feel like people shouldn't set out thinking that you're going to do that. You know what I mean? Like, normally I would suggest people, sometimes people send me a lot of scripts and someone will like, oh yeah, you know, it's a CIA thriller, and like someone jumps out of a helicopter and I was like, you have a budget? Well, you know, I got like $500. Like, okay, so maybe do a story about like, you know, the guy when he gets off work and he's just home in his kitchen, you know, like normally do things that are feasible and don't count on like 10xing your budget based on favors and stuff like that.
With this film, I relied heavily on my local community. So one story is our production designer and costume designer in Shilshu came up with the vision for hair and makeup. She is a friend of mine and has never done any of those things before, has never been on a film set. And is actually runs a street vendor organization in New York called the Street Vendor Project. And she and I, we've, she's worked with artists before, but not like this. But I know she's artistically inclined and she loves shopping and clothes. And so I was like, I really think you'd be good at this. And so basically she came up with a vision, and it was almost better because my style was an authenticity, like making it very true to life. And she works with street vendors. So a lot of the materials you see in the film were all donated by street vendors. Like, people are shocked when they hear my budget for this film because so much was donated. All the carts you see, besides the main one that we got made, all of those were donated, all those carts. And people just really believed, I think, in the vision and the story. And like, I didn't pay a lot of crew. I mean, I paid all the actors, but there were a lot of crew who just came up. And honestly, like for me, this comes from my community organizing background. It's like you give people opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise have. So I put people in leadership positions, and I was like, I know you can do this. You've never done this before, or you've never been on a set, but I know you can do this. And I think sometimes as a director, you have to encourage people and like be like, I believe in you, and I know you can do this. And I would give responsibility for people who are like, oh my God, this is way over me. And I was like, no, it's not. And I'm here with you as your collaborator. So I think helping people see that was really key for us.
Yeah, for me, my 3 actors were SAG. And so we did it under their micro-budget SAG agreement. And so I paid them like the minimum SAG rate per day. But yeah, they're so amazing. They were like, we'll waive the fee. Like they understood how like scrappy the film was and stuff. But in terms of crew, I work with all my friends that I usually work with a lot. And it was a really low budget in this film, like incredibly low budget. So we did it as favors. I worked on their sets for free. They now work, like they did the same for me. Just the post-production was a little more difficult. I ended up having to pay like color and sound design, their full rates. But yeah, like that's the last time I'm gonna do that. Like after that, like I'm trying to pay everyone sort of communist rates at this point. Like all paid like the same amount of money if it's incredibly low budget. So yeah, it's tough. It's tough, but I really don't want to ever have anyone didn't be working that day. And I was lucky enough to be able to do that for this one.
All right, well, I think that's our time. Yeah. Okay, so I want to thank you all again for taking the time to be here and congratulate you on just following your gut and putting yourself out there, and look at where it led you. So we're excited for your future. And again, I want to recognize Chris Gauthier, who couldn't be here, Maria Baella, who couldn't be here, and also Jessica Sanchez, who couldn't be here today, who are also the 3 other winners that couldn't join us. And thank you all for being here.
Hi, that's Mark. So let's say a quick word. I'm Calixto Chichilla. I'm the executive director for the film festival. Thank you all for being a part of this. We looked, we worked with HBO. We literally looked around the nation for the top films, and you guys are it. I encourage all the filmmakers and everyone here, to continue to follow our socials for future opportunities that'll happen. Right now we also have an opportunity for photographers. So again, keep on our socials. Between our partnership with HBO, we'll put you in touch with other opportunities as they come. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you all. Eliana.